Hello, New York Giants fans, and welcome to a new edition of the Valentine's Views podcast here on YouTube. Please like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. The Giants rookies take to the field on Friday and Saturday for rookie minicamp. We'll get a chance to look at the draft picks on the field for the first time, which means our first look at Jackson Dart, our first look at Abdul Carter. We'll also get to see UDFAs that the Giants signed and a handful of rookie tryout players. And the person who knows all of these guys better than anybody is, of course, our good friend Emory Hunt of CBS Sports and Football Game Plan. And Emory is here to tell us everything there is to know about the New York Giants rookie class. How you doing? How you been?
Doing fine, Ed, man. Always a pleasure. Finally ready for some actual football to be seen, even though it's not real football, but it's still good enough for us to get out there
It's
and see them throw the pigskin around a little bit.
it's a step in the right direction. Gives us something to write about, talk about, overanalyze, talk too much about, make too much out of,
Right.
you know, all that good stuff. Um, I think about, before we get into this Giants rookie class, I think about Daniel Jones rookie year and his first day on the field. Talking about, making too much out of things, and there are two things that stood out. Darius Slayton, who was a 5th round pick that year, his pre-draft scouting report was basically he's gonna fall because he can't catch anything. All right. So first day of rookie minicamp, Darius Slayton dropped every pass that Daniel Jones threw to him. He dropped every pass that Daniel Jones threw to him. And so of course we're over there chuckling like, oh, great draft pick. And the flip side of that was Daniel Jones kept putting the ball on target. And after the practice, Daniel Jones was like, I have to throw the guy better balls. He'll catch him if I throw him better balls.
Hmm.
And we're all thinking, oh, that's Eli Manning Jr. You know, so of course neither of those things actually turned out to be true. So yeah, we'll probably overreact to a little bit of what we see this weekend. Anyway, let's talk about the Giants draft class first of all. Just give me your impression. Joe Shane has obviously drawn a lot of praise for what he did in this draft class, through most NFL analysts, most of what you read and hear. Um, and obviously all these pre-draft grades don't mean anything till they get on the field, but initial impressions of yours, of the Giants 2025 draft class.
Actually, the Giants drafted really well. I gave them an A for their draft. Um, a lot of my top five picks at their position, respective position, the Giants were able to get in terms of across the board, even in some of the undrafted rookie free agents that they signed. I had high grades on, especially the receivers. And so when you think about man, just adding good football players, it helps the team out as a whole. The only one I didn't have the biggest uh, praise for was the quarterback selection. But even in
Mhm.
this case, if if you get a guy that you feel like, and this is where I feel like um the fit may make sense. Not necessarily the fit, but just the situation. That's what I mean. The situation makes sense because they didn't have space for a guy to be the starter right now. And so they had room for a guy that needs to sit. Dart needs to sit. So therefore it makes sense. And so when you look at that from that perspective, then and you combine all the other picks that they made, it's like, all right, this is a very good draft class. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Abdul Carter, you look at Camp Scatterbo, you look at all of these guys that they selected across the board, you're like, man, this is a really good pick. And
Mhm.
so I thought the Giants did a great job from start to finish. Outside of the quarterback selection, start to finish in terms of the player acquisition and how they fit in this team. This is going to be a very good competitive team this season.
Before we get into the quarterback discussion, your favorite pick in the class?
Oh man, my favorite pick in the class, looking at this Giants roster, I would easily say, oh man, all of them, right? Because I'm a
So
big
it's
fan.
not easy. Forget
Right.
that
It's not
easily stuff.
listen, Corey Black was someone that I was shocked lasted this long, in the draft. They got him. Then
7th
Derek
round.
Alexander, you know, a very good D tackle. Abdul Carter, obviously. Scatterbo, I'm a big fan of. Bo out of Purdue, big fan of. So, and Fedone, if he just stay healthy, like this is a so this there was not one pick that I was like, this is better than no, but all of these picks I thought were excellent because they fit a need and they were really good football players. So it's hard for me to say this one stands out above the rest because they were all damn good picks.
Nice. Nice. And if it pans out, that's 2 good drafts in a row for Joe Shane.
Mhm.
And what's interesting is a lot of people want to crucify Joe for the 2022 draft. I mean, Kavon Thibodeau's a good player, but hasn't been what the number 5 overall pick, what you would hope to get out of number 5. Obviously, Evan Neal, we know, just hasn't panned out. Um, the 2023 draft class hasn't panned out. But I give Joe some credit. Maybe it took longer than he anticipated, but he put the front office together that he wanted to put together. He's put the scouting staff together that he wanted to put together. And those things matter. You know that. You're out there on the road. Those things matter in terms of knowing your scouts and knowing your front office and being on the same page. And it certainly looks like Joe has the front office at least working together. Would you agree with that?
Well, I mean, with the recent now departure of one of the top scouts, well respected scouts in the league, you kind of wonder it how true is that, right? So that's something we won't know until next year's draft, right? Because that person could have had an impact in the last 2 drafts more so than it's being let out to be. So any disruption in the food chain could disrupt the whole thing because like you said, they're coming off of back-to-back solid draft classes. I think from a scouting perspective and grade perspective from based off what I was able to grade from these prospects, just off the initial draft report, this class blows out last year's draft class completely out the water in terms of the grades.
Mhm.
So they're trending in the right direction. And to your point, with Kayvon Thibodeau, there's no downside in having good football players. Is he's probably worth the fifth overall? Yeah, but do we care about that when he's being productive out there on the field? You don't really care where the guy was taken. You just hope that he's a good football player. So in a way, it's just kind of like, and we'll find out more about Evan Neal if he's gonna if this move should have been made 3 years ago. If he goes inside and dominates, like, oh well, okay, that makes sense too. So
Mhm.
I feel like just from a raw draft report, this class has a chance to be one of those classes we talk about. Like we bring up Ernie Accorsi's ability to knock it out the park with what 4 picks, and 3 of those were like huge superstars for the Giants. Um, so I think this class, just from a raw draft report perspective, is on par with that. This is a really good class.
Nice. I did wanna say something quickly. You mentioned Kayvon Thibodeau, and, you know, obviously people say, "Oh, he hasn't done this, he hasn't done that." And just your thoughts on this. I went and I looked, and you can look at Shaq Barrett, you can look at Trey Hendrickson, you can look at edge rusher after edge rusher after edge rusher, and you find tons of examples of guys who played on the edge who didn't become what we think of them now, didn't become that until 3, 4, 5 years into their careers. It takes time with a lot of these guys to really refine their craft.
And at the end of the day, man, like, you know, not everybody can, be the same in terms of how they start their career. I feel like, and I say we as in terms of the collective, have to really disassociate draft status with how we perceive these guys to play. Like I always use the example when it's week 9 and player X is out there doing this thing. Do you care that player X was taken, in round 1 at the top of round 1 or the bottom of round 7? If he's out there performing, that's all you really care about. And there's only 7 rounds in the draft. There's only 32 picks in each round. Some rounds with comp picks have more picks, more selections, but there's only so many spots, man. Somebody got to go somewhere, right? So at the end of the day, like how you get in. Granted, yes, I know the bigger picture. It's in terms of like the finances and all that stuff like that. But Thibodeau is a really good player. He's been productive for the Giants. He hasn't been a total whiff. You've seen other examples of first round picks be complete whiffs for a franchise, and then now on their second or even third team. This is not the case. This is a
Right.
guy that's growing, developing, and playing really well. And now you give him a situation where they get another guy that could take some pressure off of him. We may, like you said, we may see the best of him this year in year 3.
Absolutely. So, I've put it off as long as I can. We've got to get into the quarterback discussion. Um, you said that, of all the picks that the Giants made, you understood the Jackson Dart pick, for the situation and all of that. And we know that the Giants tried in 2024. They tried to go get Drake May. We know they tried to go get Cam Ward in this draft. We know that there was a time when everybody thought Shador Sanders was going to be the Giants pick at number 3. And for whatever reason, that the relationship between the two sides sort of fell apart and that didn't happen. But I'm curious what it is that sort of makes you hesitant about Jackson Dart.
When you look at, first of all, you don't want a helmet scout. That's a no-no. You know, and so it's
By
fascinating now.
that you mean look at what team he played for,
Look at
right?
what team he played for and just copy and paste, like, oh, Ohio State receiver. Everyone that plays at Ohio State is not going to be Chris Carter or more recently Chris Olave, right? Or
Right.
they're coached well. They do have similar traits in terms of their technical skill and their proficiency and how they, accomplish a goal. But there's a difference between Alex Mack and also Michael Thomas and also Marvin Harrison Jr., right?
Right.
So but it's fascinating now that I look at my scouting report for Jackson Dart, right? Strengths, good athlete and athleticism for the position, very light on his feet, which gets him out of a jam more often than not. He's able to step up and out of tackles and extend plays. Solid and throwing on the move, gets good weight transfer to drive the ball outside the pocket, throws a very catchable ball, which helps the receiver grab at all levels of the field, able to throw with good touch and accuracy. And then you look at some of the question marks that have areas of improvement. Total arm strength and velocity are just about average. Really shows up when he's tasked with driving the football. Defenders can work themselves back into the play. Passes tend to hang up in the air when going deeper down the field. Tries too often to guide the pass into a receiver as opposed to just letting it rip. And when facing blitz or pressure, and here's the thing, pressure can also be situational pressure, not just necessarily the blitz. He has a tendency to get tunnel vision, lose sight of his hot reads, and also forgets his athleticism, which results in him taking some avoidable sacks. So that's my scouting report on Dart. But then when you go and look in 2022, my scouting report for Matt Corral, the strengths, very good quicks and elusiveness for the position, able to get himself out of trouble and be an asset as a scrambler. He's a bit of a gamer as well. Can be considered a plus run in a one in a run game. Excellent RPO player, consistently reads it right and delivers the ball on time. Very good short area accuracy, was much better this past season in terms of ball security. So there's an understanding of when and where to force a throw. His areas of improvement. He's a bit of a reckless runner, will take on too many unnecessary shots. Deep ball accuracy isn't as consistent as you'd like, tends to leave some opportunities out there on the field. Working past his pre snap first read option will need to be refined, can get caught holding the ball too long and also throwing it blindly. Arm strength is adequate at best, can't drive the football consistently across the field. Man, that sounds a lot like Jackson
So
Dart.
there's a lot of
So
similarities.
there's a
Yep.
lot of similarities, but the point I'm making is if you extrapolate the player, maybe this is something wrong with the system, right? So this
Mhm.
could be a system issue more so than a player issue. The player is playing within the system. But also, there are some things that you kind of worry about because we see Matt Corral sort of struggling right now in the UFL with some of these same things that he struggled with coming out of college, holding the ball long, first read is taken away, struggles to make a quick decision to move on to something else, still taking some unnecessary shots. Dart doesn't take those. Dart does kind of show some toughness, but he's a little bit bigger, so he can do that in terms of weight. But in terms of once the first picture is taken away, that's when Darts tends to struggle and he locks in on that first target. He has a pre-snap picture, and when the post-snap picture changes, that's when the trouble starts. And everybody brings up the Florida game. Very justifiably so. That was something that, man, this is the playoffs on the line, and you have a meltdown at the end of the game. But when you go look at the LSU game or any other big game that they played, it's like, man, Dart, I need you to step up and make some winnable plays as opposed to, costing your team a chance to win the game. And that's why I prefaced my statement about him sitting and breaking him out of the system that he's coming out of could help his situation as an NFL quarterback more so than Matt Corral, because Corral was thrust into the NFL and was looked at to be potentially a starter in Carolina, flamed out, didn't perform well in the preseason game. And I think here, because there's no stress or pressure for him to start, Dart, that is, he has a chance to break some of these tendencies that's coming out of that Ole Miss offense.
Yeah, I get it. There's a lot of question marks with Dart. There's a lot of question marks with a lot of the quarterbacks in this class, but you never know what they're going to be. But it feels like for me, and just comment on this. It feels like for me that that this was a good gamble for the Giants. It feels, in terms of there's enough there to like that if they put him in the right situation, if they give him some consistency, I think there's a possibility that this works out. And we all know that more often than not, these quarterbacks drafted in the first round don't turn into what teams hope they turn into. I did the research going back to 2010, and I think if you judge these guys by calling them solid starters or above, I think it's still less than 40% of these guys drafted in the first round that become even that. So I guess the question for you is, despite your reservations about Dart, was this a gamble worth taking for the Giants?
I don't think so, and here's why. Because if the key word you use there is gamble, right? And if we're gonna gamble on something, gamble on the person that has the highest upside, and that person to me was Jalen Milroe because of the athleticism and the potential upside. There's no questions about the offense that he's coming out of. Um, and so now you have a chance to really work behind the scenes on the footwork and all of those things with a guy that can give you at least something right away because he has the one thing you can't coach is that's explosive speed and ability to run. With Jackson Dart, you kind of well, what's his gamble, right? Like what's the is not the Josh Allen arm, is not the Jalen Milroe speed, is not the you know Aaron Rodgers arm angles, or the deep ball of the Russell Wilson, right? Or
Th-
no GAF
There's
Jameis Winston, right?
there's
Like
there's not that one wow trait,
there's
is
not
what
that
you're
one
saying.
wild trait that you say, okay, we can gamble on this. Like he could be a solid guy, but and again, this is where the team has more intel than we do in terms of who else wanted Dart. But this was also like when I hate to bring up the old quarterback in Daniel Jones, but this was like when you offered them the contract. Well, who are you bidding against? In terms of Dart, it's like, well, who were you trying to keep Dart away from? Was it the Rams or whoever, right? But you felt if you liked, but I do like the fact that hey, we like Dart, we're gonna get him. That I
Mhm.
agree with because if you like a guy and that's the guy you all consensusly um agreed upon, go get him. Then it
Mhm.
won't matter. And that
You just you just think your guy would have been Milrow in that
my
situation.
guy would have been, because that is the gamble that you take on a guy, right? Like
Mhm,
that's the type of gamble you take. Because
mhm,
there's a wowing trait, you know what I'm saying, that somebody else doesn't have.
mhm. So, we need to talk about Shador Sanders a little bit.
Mhm.
Obviously, didn't wind up with the Giants. I know how you felt about Shador Sanders. The last time I had you on my show, you called him the Black Joe Burrow. I know how you feel about the player that you think he can be. Um, we're a little bit removed from it now. Just you've had time to digest it and think about it and probably talk about it in some other settings. Just as you've sort of processed it all, where are you on his fall all the way to the 144th pick in the draft?
I said this the Friday morning after the first round on CBS Sports. I was like, listen, this is less about Shador, the player, and more about the Shador, the idea of the Shador Sanders, and more about Coach Prime. Because here's the because if anybody tells you it's a football reason why, they're lying to you, Ed. They're gaslighting you.
Mhm,
This was about, think about what we just came off of, the Nico Iamaleava situation, where a starting quarterback at a Power 4 program that went to the postseason said, "I'm sitting out." Like, what? You know what I'm saying?
mhm,
And so think about the NFL perspective. You got these guys now making a crazy amount of money at the collegiate level, these quarterbacks specifically, making this money. There's no guardrails in NCAA. And so now they have a little bit more power than they did years before. College football is like the NBA. The NFL does not want to be like the NBA where the players have the power. So this just happened to be the perfect lightning rod to make a statement, not only to Coach Prime, but also to the establishment of college football. Like, hey, you're not going to be able to dictate where you go in our league. We dictate where you go. And so they made that point clear. This is the perfect ploy and foil to make that point. They use the most polarizing player, the highest profile, coach, and made the point that we run the ship here in the NFL. And that, to me, was this was all about. It wasn't about no interviews. It wasn't about, because think about it, man. We've seen some guys do egregious things still get drafted pretty high. So,
mhm,
and especially at that position, this was more about the power play. Like, we're not,
mhm.
because think about this draft, and we got one on the team now, Jordan Blythe, fantastic receiver. Dad's Dre Blythe, right? So there's a bunch of there was like 14 or 15 former NFL players' sons in this draft class. And so imagine what's coming down the pike. If we allow this guy to dictate where his sons go, who's to say other players are going to be able to dictate where they go? And now we have an NBA situation. The
Right.
NFL has been fighting hard against that consistently. And that's why I thought they made an example of this situation. And it wasn't about the player, it was about what the idea of the player is. And, they don't allow, you don't want, and the quarterback's unique, you don't want the quarterback position to be a person be louder than the quarterback position. Any other position you can be loud, but quarterback, they kind of want you to stay as an extension of ownership, an extension of the coaching staff. So I understand. I don't understand it. I don't agree with it, but I get this was more of a power play than opposed to a personal play.
Right. Would you I mean, we've seen a lot of the reporting. Um, do you agree with the idea that Shador, maybe the Sanders family in general, made some mistakes in the process?
I don't know, because that's the thing. If you think about this from this perspective, because there's only one perspective coming out. And you have to, and this is where, if you're a true journalist, you got to ask the question, like, why am I being fed this? Why am I being told this? why is this all coming from one perspective, right? So I can't say yay or nay if they made a mistake or not, because I find what we're hearing is all coming from one side. So and one side is not speaking and one side is doing all the talking. So that also kind of tells me like this may not be factual or as factual as it's being portrayed because it's only being portrayed how everybody has the same message, right?
Right.
And that
Mhm.
that always is a red flag for me.
Right. I actually give the Sanders side some credit for just for not prolonging it, for just being quiet and going with the situation as it is. I want to talk about as we said at the top, rookie mini camp starts on Friday. We see 2 days of these guys on the field. I wanna talk about the undrafted free agents, and this is where, folks, I say this every year, if you haven't purchased M's draft guide, it's still worth going out and getting if you wanna read some material about some of these undrafted guys. Um, you got what? 4 million profiles in your guide this year? Something like that? Every player that's ever worn a football uniform?
You know it, over 1,200 and even over 50 CFL prospects in there too, Ed. So we put out a large one this year.
Good lord. Dane Brugler put out 400 or so, and M's got 3 times that many. So if you're looking for obscure prospects, although I can't remember who it was a year ago. There was one guy I went looking for information for that you didn't have, and I still can't believe you didn't have it. I
There's always a
still
bunch of guys, man. Like, cause I look at this, and even it was funny you bring it up because I would say during the draft, we're on day 3, and we're watching we're in studio watching the draft, and it was like 4 players that got drafted that I had no report on. 4. So even some of the more obscure players I had reports on, but somebody gets drafted from a Power 4 program and I had nothing on them. So it's
you're
rare. It
you're
happens.
slipping. You're slipping. Jeez. I don't know. Maybe you're just too big of a star now and you're not working as
That could
hard.
be
I
it.
don't know.
That could be it.
I don't know, man. But but hey, let's talk about this Giants draft class. And as far as I can tell from the reporting that I've seen from all the, it looks like the Giants signed 14 undrafted free agents. And before we get into these guys individually, there are 6 wide receivers
Hmm.
among that 14. That's a stunning number of guys at one position. And for me, they signed 2 free agent wide receivers as well, veteran guys, Lil Jordan Humphrey and Zach Pascal. And I think Little Jordan Humphrey is the guy that's probably gonna make the roster, but for me, this just screams that they're trying to remake the bottom of their wide receiver depth chart. Um, what, if anything, does, that many guys at one position tell you?
Well, you look at the types they brought in outside of Jordan Bly, who's more of a slot guy, Dre Bly's son out of Gardner Webb. They went after big dogs, and which I've always said they need a big dog. And when I'm talking about big dog, I'm talking about guys that got size, right?
Right.
They need somebody on the outside. You talk about Bo Collins out of Notre Dame, big body wide receiver. Antoine Wells Jr. out of Ole Miss, big body wide receiver. Dalen Cambry, who I don't have a grade on, but he's a raging Cajun. He's a big body guy. But I think towards
Daquan Felton's another one, I
Saquon,
think.
another one, big body guy out of Virginia Tech, right? And all of those 3 guys I have grades on. So it shows you they had a type that they were searching for. These and think about it. They go and bring in Lil Jordan Humphrey, big body wide receiver. Pascal's a core special teamer, bigger body guy, so they're clearly looking for that type, right? And I
Mhm.
thought that's what I took away from whom they brought in as undrafted free agents at that position. Again, outside of Jordan Bly, they went big dogs at receiver, and
Mhm.
it'll be fascinating to see how that ends up uh, working itself out during camp.
Might be bad news for Bryce Ford Wheaton, who is also that big
Mhm.
bodied special teams guy who who hasn't really yet developed as a wide receiver.
Right, and that's why I kinda like Bo Collins out of Notre Dame, the undrafted guy. When you watch his play, he was open a lot, man, but they just didn't throw the football like that at Notre Dame. It was a primarily run-based team with a running quarterback, but Bo Collins was open often. So I'm
Mhm,
excited to see him, and Wells, this is a situation with Wells. I was like, man, there's always it's better to be a big fish in a small pond because his true freshman season at James Madison when they were still FCS, I was like, oh my God, this guy is the truth. He was a
mhm.
freshman All American. Just I was like, he's gonna be a pro player, and then he transfers to South Carolina, and then James Madison moves up to FBS the next season, and then he transfers from South Carolina to Ole Miss, and he's kind of got lost in the shuffle. But that's another guy that's a really good wideout. And I like the fact they paired him with a guy he has played with in Jackson Dart.
Yeah, that will help both guys, I think. It should help both guys, um, just be a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you think about what the Titans did with Cam Ward and Xavier Restrepo as well
Mhm,
as Andre, bringing guys that you are comfortable with, trust, allows you to be more of yourself than trying to fit into a system here in New York.
mhm. I don't know if you're looking at the class as a whole, but, just give me, outside of wide receiver, give me a couple guys that they brought in, that you really like, that you think have an opportunity to stick around.
Jermaine Terry, man, the tight end of the Oregon State, 6'4", 250. He's my number 7 flex tight end. So the like I said, the Giants either bought the draft guide or they had me in the room, right? I can't confirm or deny what went on, right? But I love the fact that this dude was someone I'm like, man, he got game. I saw him down at the Hula Bowl,
You
um,
Mhm,
and was impressed with how well he moved. He got good athleticism. Kind of compares what they already have in the room, in the Theo Johnson types, those type of guys. When I talk about flex tight ends, those are like your big body wide receivers. But again,
mhm.
sticking with the mold, they're going to try to find guys that can, you know, make plays, and try to get a big body receiver. And O'Donnell Fortune, the corner out of South Carolina, I love this prospect because he has the physical stature that you're looking for. And what we used to see under Wink Martindale, um, how he had a clear type at corner. You know, these guys with Metroid like arm length that scratch the grass as they stand there in their stance, right? And so he's another one that fits that mold. So those two are someone outside of that I think have a really good chance of making an impact.
And we will find out, we'll start to find out on Friday what this all looks like. And I know that you'll be there. I'll be there as well. And I'll be standing next to you, asking you all kinds of questions about the tryout guys. You know,
Right.
about the tryout guys because there's a bunch of those as well. And I think last year the only tryout guy the Giants signed was Elijah Chapman, but a handful of those guys get 90-man contracts most years. So and you can usually tell a lot of times you can tell which guys are going to get offers right away.
Yeah, and I think that's what I'm most excited about because we don't have that list yet, right?
Right.
And so we only get that once we get to camp,
Right.
and we're seeing, oh wow, this guy, and it's dope to see, but it's also bittersweet. 'Cause like this dude's a good player, but he's not getting the opportunity, and that's just how the luck of the draw is with the NFL. So it sucks, but it's dope to see guys get an opportunity, and who tries to make the most of the 2 days out there on the field.
Right. It's interesting. I know we were talking before the show started about how, last year during the mini camp, we were in the facility because of the weather. And on Friday, it's supposed to rain all day. So we'll be inside in the practice bubble, stuck in the corner
Stuck
where
in the
they always
corner.
put the media. The only good thing about being stuck in that corner last year was that for 2 days, the defensive lineman worked out just a few feet from us and I kept looking at Elijah Chapman going, every time he hits the dude holding the dude moves back about 4 yards. I was
Right.
like, and I was like, this guy's gonna get an opportunity here, and lo and behold, he was the one that got signed. So,
I will say this, Ed, just so folks realize I'm not blowing smoke. I want to walk through the grades, and I know you have them as well. So Abdul Carter was my number one edge rusher, so that's a check for the Giants.
mhm.
Darius Alexander was my number three defensive tackle, so that's another check. Marcus Bowe was my number two guard. That's another check. Thomas Fedone was my number two H back. That's another check. You talk about Cam Scatterbo. Scatterbo was my number 9 running back. Check. Dart, number 7 quarterback. Check. Right? So, and even some of these undrafted, we talk about Bo Collins, like my number 6 or 7 split in. Terry, 7 flex type. Like, that's what I'm saying, Ed. This was a crazy draft for the Giants in terms of like how dope I thought the class was. So I'm not blowing smoke. They knocked it out the park.
All right. And that's a good place for us to leave it. Always, folks, check out M's draft guide if you haven't done so already. You can do that over at Football Game Plan. Check out M's work at CBS as well. So, M, it'll be soon enough. You'll be preparing for another draft, and we always appreciate the time and the insight. I know that you're up against it here, and you got another commitment you got to run. So we're going to let you go. Giants fans, thank you as always for watching. Please stay safe out there. Take care of each other, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.